All right, so I always ask this, but I don't remember. I should try and remember in my head. How many people here were Christians before you kind of came to the way? Okay. How many people, because this won't be everybody, I don't think. How many people remember when you actually gave your life to Jesus, accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that thing as a Christian? So kind of recall that to your head. Do you remember how you felt like, I can see? It's like things are different, right? You feel lighter, you feel enlightened almost, right? And it's like, wow, this is neat. And you're kind of floating on air for a couple days. You know, a lot of people get really on fire for Jesus at that time. How many people remember when they came to the way? Because most of us came to the way. Didn't you feel something similar? Didn't you feel like, wow, the scales have really dropped from my eyes now, and now I really understand what this book is about, what the Father wants for me and how He wants me to live my life? That's how I looked at it. And I felt like, well, I have new eyes, I have new perception. It's not a new reality. I can just perceive the reality now as it is. That's what I thought. How many people think they all have it all figured out? And that'll never happen again. Right? See, I learned. First time, cool. I got this. This is neat. Second time, wow, I really thought I had it the first time. This is neater. In my mind, that just set me up for more revelation. I'm not giving you new revelation today. That is not what I'm doing here. But it felt like to me, because what we are going to talk about is something similar to the scales falling off, as we read that Paul said in John. In John. John chapter 9. Shalom, my brethren. Yeah. John chapter 9. I think, be it the Father's will, we're going to get through a whole chapter today. Because it's a good story that just keeps building and building and building on itself, and it actually is a fairly short little story. And so let's just get into it. John chapter 9. As Yeshua passed by, he saw a man that was blind from birth. Watch the wire right there, sister. And his disciples, now this isn't necessarily the apostles, the disciples. Where it says disciples, it's like the people who are following Yeshua around. He's an amazing guy, he's their master, they're following him around. His disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? This is not a Pharisaical trick question where they're trying to, because it kind of sounds like that, right? It sounds like they're trying to put Yeshua in a box, and they're trying to get him to pick one or the other, and they're going to go, aha, you're wrong. But it's not the Pharisees. These are actually students, and this is a philosophical, quasi-religious conversation about a subject that they've been having for a while. And so now they see a blind guy, so this is like, hey, this is a good chance to ask him. It's the same question as people who are born with any strange ailment. Can I use the word strange? You know, whatever. They're born with a disease, or they're born crippled, or they're born blind. They're born with something, and it's like, okay, so did they sin that in the womb that they came out that way, or did their parents sin? I mean, obviously somebody sinned. See, that's the supposition there. Somebody sinned for this guy to be born blind. This is an idea that primitive cultures have. It's like if something wrong with them, obviously that's like payback, right? That's like karma. That's like somebody sinned, so they're getting punished. And so they're asking this in honesty, but they're trying to figure out, is it his own darn fault that he's blind? Or is it his parents' fault? Because obviously it's one of the two. And Yeshua answered, neither has this man sinned, nor his parents. He didn't sin. His parents didn't sin, not to bring this about, but that the works of Elohim should be made manifest in him. So he's saying this guy was born blind for the express purpose that God's works could be done through him. Think about Israel. Israel goes into captivity in Egypt, in Mitzrayim. They're a beaten down, trodden, enslaved people. Why is that? Because of the bad things they did before that? You don't really get that, right? You know, they go into Israel, they go into Egypt, things are cool for a while, and then all of a sudden they're slaves. It's so that Yah could be glorified through them, through their downtroddenness in lifting them up. And so he goes, it's neither him nor his parents. It's so that Elohim, that God's works should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no one can work. Yeshua is foreshadowing the time when he's leaving. And he's like, I got to do the work while I can. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. What is Yeshua? The light. He is the light. Bring the light. Can you see the light?
I can see the light.
Can you see the light?
I can see the
It would be fun to be that kind of preacher. Because we could do that for 5 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So he says, I'm the light of the world. And when he had thus spoken, now I came to this bit of scripture, a couple years ago when we talked about Yeshua healing people. What's the proper way to heal somebody? Oh, well, Pastor Joe, everybody knows you lay hands on them, hopefully on the affected area. If it's a woman and you're a man, you get somebody to do it for you by proxy. So you have like her husband lay hands on her or vice versa, because you don't want to be touching a woman like that. And then you pray over them, Heavenly Father, and you cast out those demons and you say, heal in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach or Jesus the Christ. Everybody knows that's how you do it. But that's not true, because if you look at all the different ways, which we're not going there today because we already did a sermon with that Yeshua healed people, it was like different all the time. He'd say, stand up, walk, be good, do this, do that, here's spit in your eye, here's mud in your eye, here's all these different things. There's no magical formula to it. So, here's what Yeshua does. He spat on the ground. And he made mud out of the spittle. Now I just had some water, so check this out. Yeshua did it, so I can do it. How much mud can I make out of that? You gotta get spitting, man. You gotta keep spitting it all in the same place till you can make like some mud. He spit. He's not walking around. He's not dipping Copenhagen, right? He's not walking around with a big old in there. So, that's just something to think about. Here's Yeshua, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus in the perfectly clean white robes, right? And he's making mud out of spit. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe me, go try and make some mud out of spit. It takes a lot, right? Enough to he's going to put it on the guy's eye, watch. And then he anointed the eyes of the blind man with clay, with mud. And then he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. Now the deal with Siloam, with the pool there, is the water would come in intermittently. It would come in and flow out and come in and flow out. And we've talked about that before. So he goes, all right, go wash that and go. And he didn't say go wash it out and you'll be healed. There's a blind dude, he spits in the ground, he makes mud, he says, come here. And he rubs mud on the blind guy's eye, and he goes, now go wash that out in Siloam. Mm-hmm. And he went his way, therefore, and he washed, and voila, he could see. Just like that, he washed the mud out of his eyes, and he could see. Do you think that's where the phrase, it's like from the 20s and 30s, it was like a toast with alcohol, here's mud in your eye? You think that's where that comes from? I don't know. I guess I could have looked that up. So, this guy who, from birth, has been blind. He's never seen anything. All of a sudden can see. And his neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind. Everybody knew this guy was blind. He's that poor guy that's been blind the whole time he's been alive. Everybody knows who he is. That's old blind Shlomo or whatever. Before they'd seen that he was blind, they said, isn't this That guy that sat over there and begged all the time, because there's no social welfare services and people aren't taking care of each other. And so the way this guy survived was to beg to get enough money to buy something to eat. So he would sit there blind. And some said, yep, this is he. And others said, well, he looks like him, but I'm not really sure it's him. But the guy said, no, it's me. I'm that guy. I'm the guy that's been blind since I was born. I am he. Therefore, said they unto him, well, how were your eyes open? How were his eyes open? Yeshua did it, right? Grace, right? He did it out of grace. I asked you earlier, how many people here, when you came to Christ the first time, did you feel like your eyes were open? Everybody pretty much said that. And I asked you, when you came to the law, when you came to the way, when you came to understanding, didn't it feel like it again? And all of a sudden you could see again. It's like, wow, I had blurry vision. I didn't even know it. It reminds me of my daughter. She had horrible vision, thick glasses her whole life. And I told her, when you turn 18, if you want, I'll pay for LASIK surgery for you. And so she finally got it. And when she came home that night and took a shower, she said she realized for the first time that you can actually see your toes in the shower. She could never see her toes in the shower the whole time growing up, so she didn't know that you can see your toes when you're in the shower. So it's just blur down there for her until then. So it's an amazing thing when you can see. Somebody asked me recently via the YouTube or an email or something, what books did I read or who did I listen to understand that we have to follow the way? How did I come to the way? Through what teachers or what books? I didn't. I came to this book. I just had it, and it's like the theme question this week, because I've gotten it like 3 times asked different ways on my site. What should I read so that I can better understand Torah? Torah? That's a good one. Or what did you read? Just this. Just this. And I just prayed for understanding, and I prayed that he opened my eyes, and if there's something, that I don't see, show me, Father. And he shows me. And I'm sure he did something similar to all y'all. And so, but these people want to know, how were your eyes open? Hey, this is pretty cool stuff, man. Can you imagine him not even wanting to answer that at that point? I mean, can you imagine being blind your whole life and now all of a sudden you can see all of this? It's like, shit, that doesn't matter how I can see. I can see. Wow, look. To me, that gets to the points of like, when people get down to the nitty gritty and argue these little finer points of Torah or this, that, or the other thing. Wow, I just came up with an analogy that fits. It's like missing the forest for the trees. Right? You can't see because you're just focused on these little things. I don't think he really cared at this point. I really don't think he really cared when they're asking him, how did you get healed? He's just like, dude, I can see. But let's see what he says. He answered and he said, a man that is called Yeshua, he made clay, he made mud, and he anointed my eyes. And he said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received my sight. And then they said unto him, where is he? Where is this guy? I don't know. I couldn't see. When I watched, he wasn't there. I mean, that's really what it is. He doesn't know where he went. He can't tell where people are going. He went that way, I think. So he goes, I don't know. And so then they bring him to the Pharisees. The guy that beforehand was blind, they bring him to the Pharisees. Do you start getting the sense here? It's like, even though this is happening probably in Jerusalem, right? Which is a fairly large city. It's still like small town mentality, and it's kind of like those old West movies or like the old kingdom baron type movies. There's these authority figures, right? The Pharisees, they're ruling over everybody kind of, and they're interpreting God, and so people follow what they say. And now there's this thing, it's like, dude, you got to come see the sheriff, man. And so they bring him this miracle to the Pharisees. Now, check this out. It was 14. It was the Sabbath, Shabbat day, when Yeshua, Jesus, made the clay and opened his eyes. Oh no. Are you telling me he healed on Shabbat? This isn't the only place we read about Yeshua healing on Shabbat, right? Isn't that work? Somebody asked me a question this week. Pastor Joe, what are your thoughts on doctors and EMTs and paramedics and police? And then he went into some weird ones. Oil field workers or something. I don't know. He didn't say that, but something like that. Working on the Sabbath. And I actually prayed about that and I decided not to answer him. I'm just going to let him figure that out and look that up in the Word. Because I bounced between a couple answers. What do you care what I think? What's Yah say? You know, that kind of thing. Is it wrong to do good? Is it evil to do good on the Sabbath day? That's what Yeshua said. No, it's not. And it was the Sabbath day when Yeshua made the clay and opened his eyes. And then again, the Pharisees also asked him how he would receive his sight. Everybody's asking this guy, dude, how did you get to see? And he said unto them, he put clay on my eyes, and I wash, and I see. And therefore some of the Pharisees said, this man is not of God, because he keeps not the Sabbath day. Who's this man? Yeshua. They're talking about the guy who healed him. They're like, well, this guy who healed you is obviously not of Elohim, not of Yah, because he worked on Shabbat. And we all know that men of Yah do no work on the Sabbath day. Check. Others said, well, wait a minute. How can a man that is a sinner, they're referring to the guy who healed him, they're referring to Yeshua who worked on the Sabbath day. How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was division among them. And then they start discussing it. I said on Shavuot, we were talking about the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. And there's this attitude of superiority that goes amongst people. And they're like, well, we understand the way. We're following the way. We're truly following Yeshua. And my question was, then how did all those healings happen at Round Parade Church? We weren't keeping Shabbat. I was eating bacon on Sunday morning. I was eating lobster. Totally wasn't keeping Torah. And yet there were healings. And it's not just Round Prairie. It's just my personal experience. There's lots of healings that go on. How does that happen if they're going against Christ? There's answers to that question, but that's what they're asking. So there's division. They're discussing it. Verse 17, and they say unto the blind man again, now what sayest thou of him that he has opened thine eyes? Well, so what do you think this guy is? Some people are saying he's a sinner because he worked on Shabbat. Other people are saying, how could he heal if he was a sinner? What do you think, formerly blind man? And he said, he's a prophet. He's a prophet of Yah. He is sent of Yah to deliver a message. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. They're like, no way, man. Because see, what's happening is they're starting to think, yeah, that's a pretty darn good argument. How did he get healed of his sight? By a sinner, and he's obviously a sinner if he's healing blind people on Shabbat, so he probably wasn't really blind. That's a logical kind of train of thought. So they call his parents. They're like, well, let's get his parents here. Let's see if he really was born blind. Maybe he wasn't. And so they asked him, saying, is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then does he now see? And his parents answered them, and they said, well, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees, we know not. Or who opened his eyes, we know not. He's of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. It's like, hey, we don't know how he got healed. I tell you, he is my son. He was born blind. I don't know how he got healed, but he's not a kid. Ask him. These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Hamashiach, that Jesus was the Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. So there's that pressure in the church that if you don't conform to our teachings, you're outside the synagogue. And if you're a Jew, if you are culturally and physically a Jew, and your own people say you can no longer fellowship with us, where does that leave you? Excommunicated, disfellowshipped, all that because you don't believe like we believe. There are times to put people outside of the camp. That's given to us in Torah. There are times to disfellowship with people and turn them over to Satan and let them go. But we can't let that go to our head and so quickly disfellowship from people and tell them to go away because they don't believe everything like I believe.
Hallelujah.
How many people's eyes were open when they came to the way and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. Me, you, most of us. So then what do you think now that somebody comes up with this thing and you're like, I don't really see it that way. You know what? You can't hang out with us anymore. That's what they're doing. And so these people are scared to death. Their whole life is wrapped up in community. And so they are not going to go out on a limb for Yeshua. To their credit, did they know Yeshua, the parents? They hadn't met him yet. But they're not willing to go any further on this because they're like, I'm not giving this up for coulda, shoulda, woulda, maybe. All right, put out synagogue. 23. Therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. And they again called the man that was blind, and they said to him, give Elohim the praise. Not this Yeshua. We know that this man is a sinner. Okay, you can see, your parents said you were blind. You're not blind anymore, that's clear. All right, you can't give any credit to this dude. You got to give credit to God. Isn't that kind of funny? You can't give credit to Yeshua. You got to give credit to Elohim. Oh, what they don't know. Right? In fact, this guy doesn't know that. Verse 25, he answered and said to him, now I like this guy's logic. He's going again. Today, he has spent his entire life as a blind beggar. Well, maybe his entire adult life. He's been a blind beggar. He is the lowest of the low in society. He's probably wearing horrible, dirty, filthy rags. He's barely eaten enough. Life is horrible for him. And now he can see. He's probably still wearing the rags, right? He's probably still filthy from sitting on the corner somewhere. And he's standing in front of the Pharisees. And everyone's like all excited about him. You would think that would be intimidating, but I think this guy got tough while he was sitting on a street corner with a little metal cup saying, alms for the poor or the blind or whatever. Listen to how he answers them. He said, all right, give praise to Elohim because we know that this man is a sinner. And he answered them, he said, hey, whether he be a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, where I was blind, now I see. I once was blind, but now... I might have the tune off. Was blind, but now I see. That's how it goes. He was like, hey, call him what you want. Sinner, not a sinner. Dude, I don't know. I'm not judging that. I know this. I can see. What's that? What camp is he falling into? He's falling into the Yeshua camp, right? He's like, hey, this guy did some works. His tree bore some fruit. And I can see, and I'm not going to condemn him. That's what he's basically saying. I'm not calling him a sinner. This guy gave me my sight. That's a pretty bold thing to say when his parents weren't brave enough to do that. And then they said to him again, okay, now, so tell me again, what did he do to thee? How did he open your eyes? I like this. Verse 27, the guy's got cheek. He answered them, I have told you already, and you didn't hear me the first time. Would you like to hear it again? Will you also be his disciples then? What, you want to hear so much about this Jesus, you want to follow him too? Wow! Because he knows they don't. Right? He knows they don't like him. And he's like, why do you keep asking me this? I've already told you. It reminded me of all the movies you see. I've never been interrogated by a policeman. But, they just ask you over and over and over. It's like, I know how I would react to that for a couple reasons. But it's like, I'm not playing. Dude, I told you. You got it written down. You got me recorded. What? I told you. Tell me, just walk me through this one more time. How did this happen? What, you want to become a disciple too? That's what he asked him. He's kind of counterpunching there. He's doing verbal counterpunching. He's going to make them shut up. Verse 28. There we go. And then they reviled him. It means they started yelling at him and they got a little bit physical with him. They're like, rah, 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 with him. And they said, you are his disciple. It's like, oh, I get it there, you dirty little guy. You're one of his followers. Well, check this out. We are Moshe's disciples. We know that God spake unto Moshe. As for this dude, this fellow, we know not from where he is. We know where we get our power and authority. We are disciples of Moshe and the law of Moshe. Is it Moshe's law?
No.
It's Yah's law. Moshe just had the honor and the duty and the privilege of passing that law on to the people. People like to fall back on their supposed authority when they're losing an argument. Why do I have to listen to you? Because I said so. Okay. We don't even know where this guy's from. The man answered and he said to him, well, I love this guy. He's so sarcastic. Well, here's a wonderful thing, a marvelous thing, that you know not from whence he is. Oh, here's something you don't know then, huh? Y'all know, you all got it figured out, huh? You don't know where he's is, but check it out. He still opened my eyes. I mean, that's pretty bold, if you think about it. Let's see how they handle that. Now we know that God hears not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of Elohim and doeth his will, him he heareth. All right, so God doesn't listen to sinners, says that, but we know that if any man be a worshiper of Elohim and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? Have you all ever heard of anybody being born blind who could see again? That's what he's saying. Since the world began, have you ever heard of this? If this man were not of God, he couldn't do anything. They answered and said unto him, you were altogether born in sin. That's what they thought. See, they thought the reason he was born blind is because he was born in sin. And so that's how they wrote him off, and that's how they wrote off everybody else. And that's why we see Yeshua preaching time and time again how we're supposed to take care of the poor and the orphans and the widows and the disadvantaged people, because these people had it all wrapped up, and it's like, we're not going to take care of those people or I wouldn't get more money coming into my temple coffers. And Yeshua's like, no, man, somebody's got to take care of these people that nobody wants to take care of. If this man were not of God, he couldn't do anything. He'd be powerless. They answered and they said unto him, you were altogether born in sins, and you try and teach us? Oh, wait a minute. So you've gone too far now. Now you're getting lecture. You're telling me now about how God does and doesn't act, and who he will and will not listen to, and who can and cannot act in his name. Get out of here. Now it says cast out in King James. His parents were afraid of being cast out, and then they cast him out. It's not the same cast out. They basically just made him leave the room. They didn't disfellowship from him, but they didn't want to see him anymore, because quite frankly, they're losing the argument and there's other people listening. Yeshua heard that they had cast him out. How did Yeshua hear that they had cast this guy out of where they were talking to him? This is hot news, man. This blind guy can see. Everybody's talking about that. That's the buzz going on. And then he gets in this argument with the Pharisees. He kind of beat him in the argument, and then they booted him out. And so Yeshua hears that. And when he found him, he said unto him, do you believe me? Do you believe on the Son of Elohim, on the Son of God? And he answered and he said, who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? Do you believe on the Son of Elohim? He says, who is he, Master, that I can believe on him? He's listening to Yeshua. Why? Because he healed him. That's like direct fruit. He's like, hey, whatever, man. I'm following you. You tell me about this Son of Elohim, and I'm in. Who is he that I might believe on him? And Yeshua said unto him, you have both seen him, and it is he that talks with thee. He's like, you've seen him, and you're talking to him. And people say, uninformed people, Yeshua never claimed to be God. Jesus never claimed to be God. He just did it right there. Again, he goes, you've seen him and you're talking to him. I'm the Son of God. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. Does anybody know what that word worship means? Did he sing songs?
He bowed down.
Did he bow down like this? Lay down, face down, like you're at the bottom end of a push-up. That's how they worship. That's really what worship means. It's like laying out flat in front of him. He's like, I believe, and he worshiped him. And Yeshua said, for judgment I am come into this world, that they which see might not see, and that they which see might be made blind. That they which see might not see, and that they which see might be made blind. It's the same thing, right? Doesn't that sound totally different to what we think about Yeshua?
Oh, yeah.
I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's what he said, right? He's bringing the truth. Anybody can come to Yeshua. Anybody can come to the Father through Yeshua. You just got to go through Jesus. He's here to reveal to everybody. No, he's here to confound some people. What about Pharaoh? Moshe says, "Let my people go." And then we read that Yah hardens Pharaoh's heart so that he says no. And then he comes back and then bad things happen. Frogs, lice, whatever. Let my people go. And Yahweh hardens his heart. Our ways are not his ways. Our understanding is not his understanding. But he's coming. You won't hear this in church tomorrow. Jesus is coming to blind people.
Whoa. Oh.
He just said it. Where was I?
John 9:39.
For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see might not see, and that they which see might be made blind. I'm coming so that those who see are going to be made blind. I'm coming to blind people. I mean, think about that. Can you see the light?
I can see the light.
And some of the Pharisees, which were with him, heard these words. And they said unto him, so wait a minute. Are you saying we're blind too? Right? I mean, it says here, are we blind also? But that's really what they're saying. And Yeshua said unto them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see. Therefore your sin remains. What he's saying to them is, you think you're all that. You think you've got this Elohim thing all wrapped up, and you're like, we can see. And you can't see. And therefore your sin remains. The other reason is you've put yourself in a position of authority. You've put yourself in a position of authority over the people. You're holding this stuff over them, and he could see their hearts, why they were doing it. They weren't doing it for good reasons. They were doing it for all the pride, ego, all the bad reasons that we humans in the flesh have. And those were Yah's people that were being persecuted. So I think the message for us today, and we're finishing up, is that, yeah, he brings the light. He opens our eyes so that we can see. We say, once I was blind and then I could see, and then in this group, and then I really wasn't seeing clearly, but now I can see clearly. I'm telling you, there may be some laser correction in our future where we get down to 21 instead of 2020, 2015. Be ready for that. Don't get all pompous and think, we got this all figured out, and those stupid people over there, they're going to hell. They don't have it. They don't have it figured out. Maybe they do have it figured out. All right, let's pray.